Welcome to this podcast presented by Triple M. In this podcast, our focus is around exercise physiology, not just the profession itself, but the people it helps. We tackle all things related to optimizing movement, empowering mindset, and creating musculoskeletal resilience. In other words, creating strength. We talk to exercise professionals within the healthcare space, as well as individuals that have been positively impacted by exercise physiology as a profession. Some of the topics that will be covered in some of these podcasts will include the fitness space at the moment, healthcare and how exercise fits into that, as well as injuries and other sports performance related topics as well. Now, there's just one thing that I asked before we get into today's episode, which I'm sure will be a banger. Now, in order for me to grow this show and get on bigger guests, ask the deep questions that everyone wants to hear, and really tackle complex topics within the health and fitness space, I just ask that you subscribe. This helps me grow the show so I can make it bigger and better, and I promise in return I will work tirelessly to make this the best show possible in the exercise and healthcare space. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Alright, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. So, today I actually have no guests with me. I'm doing a little bit of a solo podcast, mostly because I want to provide an update on a little break that I've had from the podcast after the first couple of episodes. And I also want to just talk through a couple of things just in what's going on in life, in business, and all the rest of the jazz to keep you guys in the loop. Now, before we get started into today's podcast, and yes, I'm looking to get back into it and invite on some more guests. There's a couple of reasons why that didn't happen, and that's because the couple of guests that I had lined up fell through just because of busy schedules for both of us and things like that. Then I ended up getting busy with some other things, and the podcast got put on the back burner for a little bit. So we are looking to get in some more guests. If you do have anyone that you're looking to get on and you want to see me have a chat to and talk over some complex topics in the simplest way possible, let me know who that might be. I just want to highlight the importance of interactions with the podcast. So any shares, any likes, anything like that helps massively and goes a long way in helping me get the word out of the podcast and seeing what we can really grow out of this in terms of like community, but also just getting educational content out there so that people can optimize their movement, have an empowered mindset, and create musculoskeletal resilience within their body so they can tackle anything that they want to in their life, and do this in the best way possible when it comes to exercise and training and whatever that might be. For today, I mostly wanted to cover things like how the marathon training's going and different topics around that. So the last episode that I did with Brandon actually did really well in terms of talking about diabetes management and stuff like that. So I want to dive into a little bit more of the diabetes side of things and sort of help other people that might be struggling with diabetes, their management of it, and how to incorporate it into their training, different things like that. So we're just going to roll with that and see how we go. And then I want to chat over a couple of things to do with business and how that's been traveling, the business side of exercise physiology and how that can get a little bit tricky at times, working for yourself instead of for a company, and different topics like that. But with that being said, let's get absolutely stuck into it. So, marathon training. Let's give a little bit of an update on that. So yes, I am doing the Gold Coast Marathon for those who don't know. Now, I've also decided to tackle this while being in season at soccer, which is proving to be a bit more challenging than I originally thought. Now, there is a couple of times that wet weather has blessed me in terms of not having a game on a weekend and being able to catch up on a long run or something like that. But there's also been times where, because of those wet weather weekends, we've had to catch up that game somewhere else. This week was an exact example of that. We had like a Sunday game and then a Friday game, and then I had a little break before a Tuesday game. So it's like there's not much time in between. And I was actually planning to get my long run in a day after my game, which left a day before my next game. But I, unfortunately, as you can probably hear by my voice, have been a little bit sick over the weekend. And I decided that probably wasn't the best idea. Anyway, this is leaving me feeling a little bit behind in my training, but I guess we were in a good place leading up to this little hiccup. So I'm not too stressed about it, and I know I'm better off resting and getting better and fully recovering rather than just pushing through it and ending up, not feeling good at all and overtraining and whatever that might be. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the diabetes side of marathon training. this has been quite a challenging side for me. I have noticed that the extra movement over the whole week has helped my management overall really well. I'm struggling a little bit with the morning, not so much longer runs. Well, I suppose any run. I'm struggling a little bit in the morning. The marathon is in the morning, so I'm trying to do as many of my runs in the morning as I can to practice my fueling strategy for come race day. I'm struggling a little bit at times with not bolusing too much from my breakfast insulin, that when I start my run I'm going to go low, but also not under bolusing too much that I'm starting my run too high. Having a continuous glucose monitor has been life changing when it comes to this marathon training, and I don't know how I would have gotten through it diabetes wise without, because I feel like you're just going to have to run the risk of being a little bit higher so you don't go low, or potentially interrupting your run to do your blood sugar checks or whatever that might be. So it's been an absolute lifesaver, the fact that I've just been able to do my runs, have a look down at my insulin pump every now and then and check my blood sugars are at an okay level. I've been managing that with gels in my long run as well, which have 20 to 30 grams of carbs, and only needing to do small amounts of insulin, and not always either. Sometimes I can just let it roll and it's fine with that little top up every now and then. But I did have a little bit of a hiccup the other week. I was going to do, I believe I was doing an 8K run, which is 2 laps of a 4K circuit. And to be fair, before going into this run, I really thought I'd under bolus and thought that I would be well okay in terms of sugar levels. But I ended up doing 1 lap, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but I was definitely going low. And once I finished that lap, I had some sugar, had a gel, and then I was still going down after that gel. I did another kilometer or so, and then I was like, all right, I better actually not keep running here because this just keeps going down. The gel hasn't kicked in yet, hasn't worked. I only had 1 gel with me and another energy bar as well that had a decent amount of carbs in it. So I ended up walking back to where I started and had to have like a half an hour to 40-minute break in between. So that was a bit of a struggle, but that's exactly the example of what I don't want to happen race day. So I'm trying to get as much practice in for that as I can before it actually comes crunch time. And I don't want that on race day. I don't want to be waiting half an hour. To be fair, on race day, I would probably keep running, maybe just at a lighter pace, but and just trust that the gel's gonna work and work in my favor. But hopefully that's not something that we have to worry about at all. So anyway, my running times have actually been really good considering these. They're exactly where I sort of wanted to be before this little hiccup of being sick and all these soccer games and stuff like that. It's actually the hardest thing I've found about balancing all of this training is where do I like getting my resistance training session in on already sore legs and things like that, which I have been doing and I have been managing quite well. And I've been trying to stick with the same exercises or as close to as I can, because that's going to help limit any changes in exercise that might increase muscle soreness. You're going to get less DOMs if you're doing exercises that your body's used to and not providing it with new different stimuluses randomly as well. So I've been trying to stick with the same exercises so I can squeeze that in, and that's been going quite well actually. So I can't complain on that side of things. Yeah, but I am looking to complete the marathon in 4 hours. Now, I know that doesn't seem like a crazy goal, and you're probably thinking, probably had a good baseline level of fitness. Yeah, that is kind of true. I guess the reason for me is like I've never really been a runner. Like if you ask anyone from my high school, anyone, whatever it is, I've always been more of a sprinter, never been a long distance runner, which is also part of the reason why I want to tackle this challenge. I'll get into that a little bit later in today's episode, but that's kind of why I want to tackle this. Is I've never really been a runner. So 4 hours to me seems like a really challenging goal that's still doable, that's not unachievable, it's not out of reach. But that mixed with trying to get some marathon training in, mixed with soccer, mixed with other things, it's quite a large challenge I've found out. In terms of the times that I'm hitting in my training, I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Obviously, that's what I'm doing it for. That's what I'm up for. So I'm more than okay with that. But I am a little bit nervous come race day that, that might be quite a little bit far-fetched. And I know that sounds like I might be talking myself down or, not super confident. I'm like semi-confident, right? I have a feeling that that will still be really achievable for me. But I'm also knowing that this hasn't gone 100% to plan. But I also knew that it wouldn't go 100% to plan with soccer and all of that as well, if that makes sense. So there's lots going on here that we're trying to balance, and I'll get into that in a little bit as well. What a week looks like for me at the moment is like I have soccer training usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I've had a couple of weekends where I've got quite lucky and have been able to get my long runs in on like a Sunday or even a Saturday. I've also at times, I think maybe it was last week, I had a game on Sunday. Yeah, sorry, not last week, the week before I ended up having a game on Sunday. So I actually did my long run on Friday morning, which works out really well. I didn't have soccer training on the Thursday night and ended up going for a long run on the Friday morning. So that worked out really well. So there's been a couple of weeks where I've been able to organise it like that. I've sort of got it in my schedule that if I have a Saturday game, I could probably do a long run on Monday. And I was actually originally planning to do that this last Monday just gone, and that was with a Friday night game. So it would have been 100% perfect to work out, have a couple of days in between, get my long run in, and then depending on how I'm feeling, probably have a training on the Tuesday, but now have a game because of all the wet weather. Anyway, yeah, usually I'm trying to get in a long run. It's not going to happen every week because of soccer. I've got at least one low intensity, like we'll say medium distance run. So it's not crazy distance. It might be like an 8 or a 10K. And then I've usually got a shorter run in there that I'm trying to get to a bit more of a moderate intensity. So 3 runs a week with training 2 nights a week and a game on Saturdays or on the weekend usually has been changing a bit at the moment. So I'll usually try and get in a decent distance run on a Friday, which is technically the day before a game, but it's a little bit more, it's quite relaxed, that run. Like even though it's a decent volume, like 8 to 10K, it's not anything that I find it super hard to recover from because it's at a low intensity and things like that. So I go into the game the next day, like a little bit stiff, but nowhere near as stiff as what I would have been from earlier in the week, having like a game, couple of days rest, long run, training, and then another shorter run in there as well. So it works out all right. That's what I've found to be the best way to organize it at the moment. It is a little bit stupid to want to be taking this up at the same time in a season. And in hindsight, if I really wanted to push myself with the marathon and get a better time, I know that I could, but it would mean that I would have to not do soccer. And I did originally think about doing that at the start of the season, but I've decided that I didn't want to miss out on soccer this season, and it is a grade below. Most of my games are in a grade below what I was playing last year. Still same club, just in like the reserve grade, I guess you can call it. But I'm having fun with that. Like I didn't want to miss out on a year and not feel like coming back next year or whatever that might look like. I still really enjoy that side of being athletic and being fit for that. So I didn't want to miss out on the soccer. I know that I could have got a better time in the marathon if I did, but that just wasn't to be this year. Who knows, next year might be different. I might decide to take up some other challenges. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, for now, I'm really enjoying that, and I know I found it hard to balance the both of them, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So yeah, I've had a couple of little injuries and niggles along the way. Nothing major to note, really. Being sick over the weekend was the first time that I actually had to not do something because my body was like, nah, not this weekend, not today. So in terms of the run I've had with the high volume of workload between soccer and running, I've actually felt really, really good. And through the hip as well, for those of you who don't know, I had a hip injury probably end of season last year that bugged me until start of this year. That actually got me quite unfit and had me under-conditioned. And I thought that by now with the heavy workload might be getting a little bit niggly. It was quite a chronic injury that I dealt with for quite a time. I haven't had any real issues with it so far. So touch wood, all's going well with that. I had a small niggle in a little tendon in my foot. Well, it's actually, the muscle runs quite deep to your calf muscle. It's called your peroneal muscle, or it was peroneal tendon, we'll say. And that gave me a little bit of grief on the outside of my foot, but knowing or having a good idea of what it was, knowing that it's probably from the increased workload, I knew exactly what to do for it. Give the tendon a bit of love, bit of load, bit of controlled movements, and it was all good. So that only bugged me for a week or so and didn't change any of my runs. I just had to do a little bit more work in the gym around that. So, yeah. All in all, has been pretty good in terms of injuries and stuff like that. So nothing to complain about there at all. We're doing pretty well. Now, I've had a couple of people ask me this of like why I'm doing the marathon, and it's a challenging one to answer. And I feel like if you get it, you get it. If you don't, then you just don't, and it just seems a little bit crazy to you. But it's the challenge of tackling something that is hard that is what's attractive to me. And you might look at that and think that you're just putting yourself through punishment for what reason? It's punishment for what you get out of it. It's not so much for the process itself, it's for what you get out of going through that process. It's coming out the other side of a massive challenge, knowing that you could tackle that. That gives you so much confidence, so much belief in yourself, so much momentum into the rest of your life. Like, yes, it's just a run that means fuck all in the grand scheme of things, excuse my language, but being able to go through that challenging training period where you were able to tackle that because you had a goal related to that training and come out the other end and achieve what you set out to achieve. There's something about that challenge and meeting that challenge head on and succeeding in that challenge that is really attractive in terms of gaining confidence and gaining the self-belief to be able to tackle anything else. So it's more about the mental strength than anything. And I'm going to tell a story on a couple of years ago. There was when I first started doing my PT stuff that I found lots of things about that really challenging. Found posting on social media challenging. Found trying to be a bit more all right, so I just had to cut that because I couldn't say authoritative. I think that's the right way to say it. Anyway, back to my story. Yeah, I found it really challenging to be authoritative and things like that I was just lacking so much confidence and belief in myself. I think tackling that hard challenge of running your own business, having to build a brand on social media, all of these other things that were challenging that I was able to push through is actually what helped me gain more confidence, back myself more, and want to take on more of these hard, challenging things, if that makes sense. And it created lots of momentum for not just my life and my business and all of that, but also just for how you feel about yourself and how you show up just as yourself. And didn't have to show up as anyone else, and it just created this level of self-confidence that you know who you are, you know that when things get tough, how you act, gave me lots more self-awareness and understanding of myself on how I react in certain situations and different things like that you think is just an outside thing. It doesn't really impact it, but it does. That tackling those challenging situations and being able to come out on the other end, not just like going through it, but also on top of that situation, it's such a big confidence thing. And even though this is completely different to like that side of thing, which is a mental challenge when you are building a business and when you are doing that, those physical challenges are exactly the same. They show that you have respect for yourself and they show that you are tough mentally because you're able to push through those challenging things. And that's a reflection of who you are, and it's something that sticks with you for next time that you go and do something challenging. And in life, there's going to be so many different things that are challenging, and you can't control those challenging things that get put on you, but you can control how you react to them. And I feel like having that evidence in the back of your head is the best way to help you move forward in that scenario when you do come up with something challenging, because you have that confidence that you're going to be able to push through it this next time as well, not just that other time. And building this evidence within yourself is then going to relate onto any other goal that you have. It's not just going to sit within those physical challenges. It's going to relate onto any other goal. It's like you can just break it down exactly the same. Come up with a goal, come up with a reason why you want to get it because it has to be important to you, and then come up with a plan on how to get it. And most of the time, if you have those three things and you're consistent enough with the right approach, and you might not have the right approach at first, you might have to try a couple of things. Like with my running journey, I've had to try a couple of things to see what worked in terms of overall workload throughout the week, and having a good understanding of that and the physiology of the running and what I'm trying to get out of it in terms of heart rate zones and things like that. I've come up with an approach that works. And then if I'm consistent and I have a decent approach that works, then I'm going to be able to get there in the long run. No pun intended, long run. But yeah, so like I've got that evidence that all I have to do is come up with a plan. I've got a goal, come up with a plan, tweak that plan a little bit. It might not be right the first time. Be consistent, and I'm going to be able to get through it at the end of the day. And whether that is reaching that 4-hour goal or whether I don't, like either way, it's still a massive win being able to train for this and then come through at the end of the day. So, and I just want to talk about, on top of that, how deconditioned I felt at the start of the year after going through that hip injury, after not being able to run properly for, however many months, maybe 4 months, and having not been at soccer, not been working out in terms of the lower body the way I would have liked because of this hip injury, things like that I was, in my standards from where I was a year before that, very deconditioned. So that was sort of one of the main motivators as well, is like I want to turn that around and I want to get back to where I was. And yeah, and then that eventually, push came to shove, led to training for the marathon, and here we are now talking about it. So yeah, that's sort of the main reason why I want to take on that challenge and why I really want to get that 4-hour goal, is because that I feel like is a good level of challenge for me, but it's still going to be quite difficult to attain from what I've noticed so far anyway. Now, on the topic of that as well, I just want to talk about how to get into running. So my biggest tip on how to get into running is go off time, not off distance. I feel like when you set a distance target, it can sort of feel like you're trying to tick that off as quick as you can. Where when you set a time target, it's that you don't have any pressure on the pace. And technically, if you go at a slow enough pace, you're going to be able to run for that amount of time. So my biggest tip there, and it's something that I often get caught up into when I do get back into running after not focusing on it for a period of time, is I want to run this amount of kilometers. But I also find myself, especially when I am unfit and I have been fit in the past, it's like you feel like you want to run quicker and quicker and quicker, where you just sort of end up hating that run because you're going too quick and you're just absolutely gas. And I would rather go slower, go for a certain amount of time, and then slowly add time on top of that each week or each, couple of days, whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be long that you're adding on top of it. And it might even be that you're intervaling for, let's say you're doing intervals of 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off for half an hour, whatever that might be. And I feel like that would be a decent place to start if you have an okay level of fitness already, even if that's, 1 minute on, 1 minute off. It doesn't really matter how you interval it, but I would say go off time, not off distance, because then you're not trying to rush getting that distance and getting there as quick as you can. So if you are thinking about getting into running, which I highly recommend, because, cardiovascular fitness is the most important thing for creating longevity, or I say that, but I mean that mixed with strength is like obviously the main sources of longevity, but your VO2 max later in life is super important as well. So if you are looking at getting into running, that's the way I would do it. I would go off time, not off distance. All right, there's my tip for today. So I couldn't go through this whole episode without providing value, so there it is. Take it and run with it. Now, I do want to talk about how all this training has affected my business. And as you would know, the podcast, having had a couple of weeks without episodes, and why that's been the case. Obviously, I mentioned before that I had a couple of unlucky scheduling clashes with some potential guests that didn't end up happening. And then after that, I didn't have an episode for a week, and then I got a little bit slack. You get a little bit easy on yourself. You didn't have an episode for a week, and then that snowballs to, 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then before you know it, you're like, oh, I really need to do another podcast episode. And that's sort of how it went, if I'm honest. So not good enough on my behalf, not consistent enough, not where I would want to be. However, that is life. Excuse me. And yeah, that I feel like that has been affected a little bit by all the training and things like that as well. Just being busy with work, with training, with soccer, with other commitments. So yeah, it's not an excuse. It's just how it went about. However, I'm looking to get some more guests on and make sure that is nice and consistent again. So keep an eye out for that. I feel like with everything that I'm juggling at the moment, I'm being a little bit of a generalist, not an essentialist. And I feel like there's areas sort of struggling with that. And I'll say that for a couple of reasons. This is in terms of business, in terms of training, and in terms of lots of different things. Generalist, not an essentialist. So what do I mean by that? I mean that it's really disappointing on my behalf, because if someone came to me and they were like, I have goals of this, this, and this, I'd be like, well, you're wasting your time. Focus on one thing at a time, because you're going to get really good results at that one thing rather than having 3 separate goals. So you're going to get subpar results, or you might just be average at all 3 things that you have that you're trying to achieve, right? And I feel like that's me at the moment. However, while I say practice what you preach, I also say do what I say, not what I do. So at the moment, I feel like I'm tackling lots of different things, and that is marathon training, that's the soccer, so I do a little bit of coaching at soccer, which takes up 2 nights out of the week. I train 2 nights a week. I play on the weekends. It's, there's a lot going on in terms of the nights after I do my in-person sessions with my clients, after I do, a little bit of social media work, after I do looking after clients, after I do programs, after I do online clients. There's lots going on that I'm trying to juggle at the moment. And I feel like it's sort of it's ruined a little bit of momentum within my business in terms of like lead generation and getting more clients and working on getting more clients and things like that, which it's also affected my, I feel like I would have been able to do more marathon training if I didn't play soccer. I would be able to spend more time on my business if I didn't play soccer or do the marathon training. And I feel like at the moment, while it's not a bad thing and I enjoy every moment of it, and this isn't me complaining, it's just that I am very spread all over the place. And with that being the case, when you've got a certain goal in mind that you're trying to achieve, that isn't always a good thing, because then you just end up being average at all of them. And I feel like I am struggling a little bit with that at the moment. And that's not me talking bad on myself. It's not me saying that I don't enjoy it. It's just the truth of it. And I would say if someone did have a goal and they were coming to me trying to achieve a certain goal, I would say just focus on that goal. Focus on what is most important. And then after you achieve that, then you might be able to focus on something else. And that I would be the most beneficial thing that I could do. But at the moment, that's just not where I'm at in where I'm at in life. And that's also okay, I think. It's just that I feel like there's other areas that are struggling a little bit because of that. And that also, like me starting this podcast was to talk about the exercise physiology side of things. And this, if you are looking to create your own business within exercise physiology, this is a challenging thing as well, right? You're going to have to balance these areas of your health and fitness while focusing on building your business and while focusing on hobbies and while having external things that you might need to do with your family or something like that as well. And it's I guess I'm having a bit of a discussion about this because it's such a trade-off. It's like me having my own business has allowed me to organize my schedule so I can train for the marathon and I can add all of this in, but then I have all of these other things that I have to think about. Where if I work for someone else, then that would lead to me not being able to pick my own schedule and maybe not being able to train for the marathon as much. So it's a bit of a catch-22. It's like hard work working for yourself because you have to juggle all of these things, but it's also hard work working for someone else because you can't juggle it in the way that it fits. So I feel like it's a bit of a catch-22 on what you want to focus on and how you want to design your life to get the most out of it, to be able to do what you want. I do think that split time over all of these different areas is holding me back in certain areas, but I also think that the best thing I could be doing right now is working for myself to be able to split myself in these different areas the best way possible. One of my favorite concepts that a popular podcaster that I listen to quite often uses quite often is that there's no solutions, only trade-offs. And I 100% agree with this. So if you think about that in terms of training and taking on different goals and whatever that might be, it's like there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. So only things that you have to swap out or things that you have to lack on to be able to increase the area on something else. But then if you increase the focus that you've got on somewhere else, there's going to be a trade-off that comes apart from somewhere, that other area that you're focusing on external to that. So it's like the way I look at that is like you can't completely optimize for one thing without taking away from another thing. Like you can't completely optimize for marathon, in my case, I can't completely optimize for marathon training without impacting my soccer training or my performance on game day or whatever that might be. And having the both of them there, they're just sort of having a little bit of a trade-off effect on both of them. And in turn, having a trade-off effect on the work and the time I've got to put into my business and different things like that. Then it's sort of just left me spread across all three areas, that it's just left little trade-offs on all three, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I guess talking about this highlights the area of exercise physiology that is quite mentally taxing as well. You are dealing with lots of people that have lots of different issues, and that can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming at times if you don't take the time to fill your own cup up and make sure that you are looked after mentally and you have good mental strength, and you're dealing with that in a healthy way. So one of the most surprising things I once got told as an exercise physiologist is that there is an average of 4 years that people are in our role. Now, that to me at first was a little bit shocking, but then the more I think about it, the more I sort of understand why that is. It's because we're dealing with lots of complex health issues that we sort of get put onto us that we have to try and fix, and not always will we be able to fix them, or there might be things that we can't fix. And if you're not equipped for that mentally, then it can be quite a high mental load job as well. Obviously, this is on a spectrum of different ranges of different clinics or different clientele or whatever that might be. But this isn't taking away from any other role. Obviously, this can happen in any role. It's not saying that EPs have it really tough, because we don't. We have a really nice, I think it's a really good job, and it's really rewarding. And yeah, but there is quite a high mental load that can come along with it as well, that we often don't think about too much. And I don't think that this is always helped by the industry in terms of, overworked, underpaid exercise physiologists when they're first starting out, especially for 4-year degree. You don't get paid a whole lot. Obviously, it depends on where you are as well, like what company you're in and things like that. But yeah, and it's, you've got lots of clients to deal with. You probably aren't going to finish, if you have lots of clients, you probably aren't going to finish all your treatment notes and all your work that you need to do within your given hours at that company. And there's different reports that you might have to write after work hours and things like that. And that's all part of the role, of course. After being told that on average it's 4 years until burnout, you would kind of say that makes a little bit more sense. And yeah, I think it's important to have that mental strength and the ability to take on that mental load from your work in that space, and having that marathon training sort of eating into the time and the energy and the effort that I have to put into that can make it a little bit more draining as well. So I think the biggest takeaway from that is to make sure that I'm spending time on dealing with things mentally, make sure my mental health is good, and making sure I've got the capacity level to be able to withstand the level of what my job loads up emotionally. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I've had from this is, yes, I'm really enjoying the fact that I'm working for myself, which allows me to balance this properly. And I guess in terms, I'm saying this because this podcast isn't just designed for people wanting to get education from exercise physiology, but it's also designed for exercise physiologists that can come and sort of relate to things that get talked about on the podcast, or talk about different ideas within the space. And I think that this can be a really challenging area for exercise physiologists, as there's lots of work out there for us, and we definitely do get worked enough. Like it's a challenging industry when you are working for a company where you've got lots of clients that you're trying to get in and out in short time frames that have lots of different complex topics that you're trying to help them with. And I think working for myself in this period of time has, one, allowed me to be able to set my schedule the way I need it to be able to handle things emotionally and physically and still get enough rest and recovery and stuff like that. But it's also meant that I've spent a little bit less time on making sure that I have the capacity to do that, which has led to me feeling a little bit burnt out at times, which is natural, and I'm not complaining about that either. I thoroughly enjoy what I do, and that this isn't me saying that I don't. But it's just sort of led to, challenges in leading yourself when you're fatigued. It's like no one else does the work within my business. Well, I mean, realistically, it's up to me to do pretty much everything. Like, yes, I'll outsource a couple of things here and there, but a lot of the times it's down to me to do pretty much everything within my business. And if I don't have the capacity to lead myself in that direction, then it's not going to get done. And that's one thing that I found has been really challenging with challenging myself in lots of these different directions, is being able to lead myself and still be that, that leader within my business and within myself, to be able to keep up with these extra challenges. However, I am super grateful that I am working for myself, and I have the ability to organize my schedule that fits within my training, that allows me to do all of these goals. And I think this has been a really big learning experience for me in terms of taking on different things at each time and how that has a trade-off in different areas. I think I've gotten in a habit over the last couple of years of taking on too many things at one time, or not even. I feel like the habit sort of got forced because I had to at times, of like when I'm going through uni placements, but I have to run my own business and I have to do soccer and I have to keep up my weight training and all of these other things. It's like you end up spreading yourself all over everywhere and not really focusing on one particular thing. So I feel like this has definitely been a bit of a learning experience for me of like, make sure that you do not spread yourself too far all over the place. Otherwise, other things are going to have a trade-off. So they're going to be, there's no solutions, only trade-offs. And that's one period of my life is right now where I've realized how true that is, and a bit of a learning experience going forward. But yeah, with that being said, that's pretty much the update on podcasts, on training, on life, on business, on exercise physiology, and how to get into running if you're a beginner. Most important tip of the day, probably the most only educational part of today's video, the only value that I've been given out, but it is what it is. And I just want to remind you guys the importance of your shares, your likes, your follows, whatever that might be, in helping me promote this podcast and grow it to the level that is amazing, and keep spreading exercise-based healthcare tips to anyone that might need it. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.